All right, so this time you guys have really sent us something that's making us think.
Yeah.
And it's an article from roamingaround.com.
Okay.
It's dated March 29th, 2025, so pretty recent.
Uh-huh.
And the title is The Aftermath of a Political Bubble Burst, Emotions and Realities.
Wow.
And it's by AllisonRowe569@gmail.com.
It's a good one. This one I think is going to be really helpful for folks to understand this whole idea of political buddles. Like, what are they, how do they actually, come to an end?
Right.
And then what's the impact all that has on us,
Right.
both emotionally and as a society.
Yeah, it feels like this article gives us a really good way to get smart on this without having to do
Totally.
a whole PhD worth of research on it.
Yeah, it's a great framework.
So to get started,
Okay.
can we just define what we're even talking about here
Yeah.
when we say political bubble?
For sure. So the article describes it as a situation
Okay.
where a specific set of beliefs gains a really disproportionate level of support.
Okay.
And so that leads to this kind of distorted view of reality for
That's-
the people inside.
Okay.
And it makes this key distinction that this isn't quite the same as an economic bubble, right?
Yeah.
Those are more about speculation financially.
Yeah.
Political bubbles are more about
Yeah.
perceptions,
Right.
how we see things and how those get shaped.
So kind of the forces that actually cause this.
Yeah, exactly.
So what are those shaping forces?
Well, the article points to this really potent mix
Okay.
of emotions and information, or
Sure.
sometimes even misinformation.
Right.
And then this idea of social media really being like a supercharger for all of it.
Okay.
So that's really what makes a political bubble different. It's not just that people agree on something,
Right.
but it's this really intense emotional investment
Right.
that's often based on stuff that might not actually be true
Right.
if you really looked at it. And it all spreads so fast online that it
Wow.
becomes this huge thing.
Right. Yeah, it takes on a life of its own.
Absolutely.
So we're going to kind of trace the life of one of these bubbles,
Cool.
starting with how they form.
Yeah.
What are the signs that maybe it's about to burst,
Right.
and then the moment of, collapse.
Okay.
And then after that, we're going to get into kind of the emotional fallout.
Yeah, the aftermath.
Yeah, the aftermath.
Mm-hmm.
And the article even uses the word grief,
Wow.
which seems appropriate.
That's a strong word.
It is a strong word, but it's interesting.
Right.
So we'll explore that.
For sure.
We'll look at how people try to make sense of it all, how maybe their own political ideas change,
Okay.
what it does to our relationships and communities,
Right.
and then ultimately how we can pick up the pieces and maybe even learn something.
Yeah. I'm intrigued.
There's a lot to unpack here.
Totally.
So let's start with the formation part.
Okay.
Like, how do these bubbles actually come together?
So the article emphasizes the social aspect a lot.
Okay.
You know how we as humans
Right.
tend to gravitate towards people who see things the way we do?
Right.
And that creates these echo chambers
Okay.
where dissenting voices just aren't heard and any ideas that are different are kind of pushed away.
Right.
It's really interesting.
So if you're in a group
Yeah.
and everyone's agreeing and you're the one person
Right.
who sees it differently,
Uh-huh.
you're going to be under a lot of pressure to
Like
just
a
keep your mouth shut.
Or even get like ostracized.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
And the article says this type of environment
Uh-huh.
is where unverified stories and like outright misinformation
Mm-hmm.
can take root
Absolutely.
and pull the bubble even further from reality.
Yeah. And social media is really interesting in all this because these platforms connect us,
Right.
but they can also really speed up this whole process.
Okay.
So information, whether it's accurate or not,
Right.
can spread like wildfire online. And then the way these platforms work
Okay.
with the algorithms that prioritize engagement,
Mm-hmm.
it can mean that content that confirms our biases
Right.
gets shown to us more.
Okay.
So the bubble gets even stronger.
Right. So it's almost like it's feeding itself.
Totally a self-perpetuating cycle.
Right. And the article makes it clear this isn't just some abstract idea.
Huh?
It leads to this huge polarization
Yeah.
where having a productive conversation with someone
Right.
who holds a different view becomes almost impossible.
Absolutely.
Like, people get so dug into their beliefs
Yeah, they get entrenched.
that they can't even consider another perspective.
Right. It's like they're living in different realities.
Yeah.
It's wild.
And then connecting that to the bigger picture,
Okay.
this kind of division
Mm-hmm.
really weakens a healthy society.
That's right.
It impacts our ability to participate in civic life,
Uh-huh.
and it can even erode trust in our institutions.
Absolutely.
So when people are operating with such different
Yeah.
sets of information
Mm-hmm.
and beliefs, it becomes really hard
Right.
to find common ground to solve problems.
Totally. We lose that shared reality.
So the bubble forms.
Okay.
What are some signs that it might be getting ready to burst?
So the article compares it to like a financial bubble,
Okay.
where the hype eventually leads to a crash.
Right, right.
One of the first things it mentions is polarization.
Okay.
It's like the disagreements get way louder,
Right.
and any kind of productive dialogue just disappears.
Okay.
Social media definitely plays a role in that. It's more of a battleground than a space for genuine exchange.
Right. So instead of people coming together to actually have a conversation, they're just yelling at each other.
Exactly. It's all about winning, not understanding.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's one sign.
Yeah.
What else does the article point to?
Another sign is that the arguments within the bubble
Okay.
actually start to weaken.
Okay.
So as it grows, people might start relying more on emotional appeals instead of facts or logic.
Okay.
Their justifications get kind of flimsy.
Right.
Maybe they resort to personal attacks or isolated stories
Right.
instead of actual evidence.
So almost like they're grasping at straws.
Yeah, exactly. It's
yeah.
like they need to believe it so badly that
Yeah.
the quality of the arguments doesn't matter as much.
So kind of a decline in the level of the discussion.
Totally. A lack of critical thinking.
Okay. So we're looking for increasing division arguments that don't hold up.
Right.
And then what's the third thing?
So the third thing is the potential for these sudden shifts in public opinion.
Okay.
So the article talks about how big events or regulations or scandals
Okay.
can make people reevaluate their beliefs really quickly.
Like the foundation cracks.
Exactly. It's like the rug gets pulled out from under them.
And it can happen fast.
Yeah, super fast.
Okay. So those are the three things.
Mm-hmm.
Increasing division,
Yeah.
arguments that don't really hold water, and then the potential for rapid changes in belief.
Totally.
So now we're at the moment the bubble actually bursts.
Okay.
The article describes this as a period of real disruption,
Yeah.
both emotionally and psychologically.
It's like a reality check on a massive scale.
Right.
This widely accepted reality just
Right.
shatters.
Okay.
And people who were really invested in those beliefs
Uh-huh.
experience this shock and disbelief.
Okay.
They struggle to reconcile this new information
Right.
with what they thought was true.
Yeah. So how does that actually manifest?
So at first there's this disbelief,
Right.
maybe even denial.
Okay.
People refuse to accept that things have changed so dramatically.
Okay.
And it's disorienting. They're trying to make sense of this new reality.
So they're trying to hold on to what they thought was true,
Exactly.
but it's not working anymore.
The evidence is right there in front of them,
Right.
and it's creating this huge internal conflict.
Right. And the article also talks about this sense of betrayal.
Oh, yeah, that's a big one.
Like people feel like their trust was misplaced,
Right.
that they were misled.
Mm-hmm.
And so they start questioning everything.
Yeah, it shakes their whole foundation. It's not just about politics anymore.
Right.
It's about who to trust, what to believe,
Right.
even their core values.
And that leads us to the emotional fallout.
Uh-huh.
So the article specifically talks about grief and loss.
Right.
And it compares this to the stages we go through
Yeah.
when we deal with personal loss.
That's a powerful comparison.
It is.
Uh-huh.
So what does that look like in this context?
So it's not just disappointment. It's that their beliefs were so tied to their identity
Okay.
that when those beliefs are proven wrong,
Right.
it feels like a loss of self.
Okay. So it's not just I'm wrong about this issue.
Right.
It's I'm wrong about who I am.
Exactly. And that's really disorienting.
So what are some of the feelings people experience?
Well, the article mentions helplessness
Okay.
because the certainty and stability they felt
Right.
is gone.
Okay.
They might start questioning their own judgment,
Right.
their understanding of the world,
Okay.
and that leads to disillusionment.
So how does this play out in terms of like their social connections?
So political bubbles often create a sense of community.
Right. People connect over those shared beliefs.
Exactly.
Right.
And when the bubble bursts,
Right.
those bonds can break down,
Okay.
leading to isolation and even abandonment.
So it's a loss of the idea, but also a loss of the community.
Exactly.
And the article says this loss extends to the future, too.
Uh-huh.
Like people's hopes were tied to that narrative.
Yeah.
And when it collapses, their hopes get crushed.
Yeah, it's a loss of a vision for the future,
Right.
and that creates uncertainty.
Okay. So we've got this huge emotional upheaval.
Mm-hmm.
What happens next?
Well, the article talks about the search for answers. and accountability. So when people feel this disillusioned, they want to understand what happened and who's responsible. It's a natural response. They're looking for someone to blame, and they want explanations.
So they're turning to leaders for answers.
They want transparency. A feeling that those in power get it and are taking responsibility. This is really important for rebuilding trust.
But it's not just about leaders, right?
No, it's also about conversations with peers. Sharing experiences and perspectives can help people process their emotions. Finding others who've been through the same thing can be really validating.
So it's kind of like a shared healing process.
Exactly. And the media plays a role, too. In-depth reporting and expert analysis can offer a broader understanding of what happened. People are looking for reliable information to make sense of it all and to encourage more critical thinking in the future.
So it's not just about finding someone to blame. It's also about understanding how we got here.
Exactly.
And how we can avoid making the same mistakes.
Totally.
Okay, so we've searched for answers. We've tried to figure out what happened. The article then talks about revisioning our political ideals. So what does that mean?
Well, after a bubble bursts, people often do some serious soul searching. They reevaluate their beliefs and what really matters to them politically. This can be a pretty turbulent time. They might wrestle with long-held ideologies, challenge their assumptions, and encounter new viewpoints. But it can also be a time of huge growth.
So they're questioning everything.
Yeah, they're not taking anything for granted anymore. And that can be really uncomfortable. But it can also lead to a much deeper understanding of the issues.
So how does this revisioning actually happen?
Well, the article suggests that people might start exploring perspectives they used to dismiss. And they develop a more nuanced view of things. It's not about reinforcing biases anymore. It's about genuine dialogue and understanding.
So kind of breaking down those walls.
Exactly. And a big part of this is developing stronger critical thinking skills. When people question their assumptions and examine evidence more carefully, they're better equipped to navigate the political landscape. You can see the complexities and adopt a more balanced approach.
So it's about being more thoughtful and less reactive. And this isn't just an individual thing. It can impact the whole political environment.
Absolutely.
How so?
It can lead to a more informed and engaged citizenry and a healthier political environment where discussions are based on facts and respect.
So less about attacking each other. And more about actually trying to understand.
Finding common ground.
So we've talked about the individual impact. What about the impact on our relationships?
So this is a big one. When political opinions clash so strongly, it inevitably creates tension in our relationships with friends and family.
So like Thanksgiving dinner becomes a minefield.
Exactly. Simple gatherings become stressful. People start censoring themselves just to avoid arguments.
So there's this fear of even bringing up politics.
Totally. It's like walking on eggshells.
And what about the impact on communities?
So communities that were once unified can become fragmented along political lines. This makes it harder to work together on local issues. And it diminishes that sense of community cohesion, that shared purpose.
So how do we rebuild these relationships?
Well, the article stresses the importance of open dialogue, cultivating empathy, and supporting initiatives that bridge these divides. It's about healing and understanding.
So kind of actively working to repair that damage.
Exactly.
So final question.
How
do we move forward from all of this?
So the article really focuses on resilience. Both individually and collectively. It acknowledges the challenges, but it highlights our capacity to adapt and learn.
So what does that look like in practice?
Well, self-reflection is key. Taking the time to understand our own reactions and biases and finding healthy ways to process our emotions.
So therapy.
Yeah, therapy could be helpful. Support groups. Even just open conversations with trusted friends.
So finding a space to process everything. And then what about learning from this experience?
So the article says we need to understand the factors that led to the bubble. So we can make more informed decisions in the future. This could involve boosting political literacy, teaching critical thinking skills, things like that.
Okay.
And then community engagement is huge.
Building networks that encourage collaboration and bringing together diverse perspectives.
Right.
This helps communities recover and create a healthier political environment.
So for you, our learner, this deep dive into the aftermath of a political bubble has really shown us how powerful these social and psychological forces are.
It's amazing how much is going on beneath the surface.
Right.
And how much it impacts us.
Yeah, these bubbles create these warped views of reality.
Right.
And then when they burst, it has these huge emotional consequences.
Totally.
So we've seen how these bubbles form, the warning signs, the shock of the burst, the grief and loss, the search for answers.
The need for accountability.
Right. The reevaluation of our beliefs, the strain on our relationships, and then the path towards resilience and growth.
It's quite a journey.
It is. And one thing that stood out to me
is how deeply our political beliefs are tied to our sense of self.
It's almost like an extension of ourselves, and that makes it so much more personal.
Right, and the article really emphasizes critical thinking.
Absolutely.
And seeking out diverse perspectives.
Yeah, that's key.
As ways to avoid these bubbles.
Absolutely.
So as we wrap up,
I
want to leave you with a question.
All right, I'm ready.
Given everything we've talked about today, what steps can you take to have more resilient and understanding conversations, even when viewpoints differ?
Right.
Think about your own experiences and how you can approach these conversations with more empathy and thoughtfulness.
That's a great challenge.
It's something we all need to work on.
Absolutely.
So thank you for joining us for this deep dive.
It's been a pleasure.
And we'll see you next time.
Looking forward to it.
All right.
Take care.
Bye-bye.